Hey everyone, welcome to Fantasy Footy Fan, it's Jeff here. So we had our match sims over the last week or so. So in this video, I just wanted to chat a bit about what I got out of the match sims and just wanted to share that with you. I also wanted to talk about an article that was in the Herald Sun a few days ago. It's a free article, so I highly recommend you read it. You don't need to be a subscriber. Anyone can read this article. It was titled SuperCoach AFL 2024 Fantasy Experts Answer the Big Selection Questions. And it's a great article. Basically, the Herald Sun had 8 questions that they asked some of the main content or the main SuperCoach content creators. Most of those guys I listen to, and you probably listen to as well, their podcasts, or you look or subscribe to their YouTube channels. So highly recommend checking that out. So I thought just for a bit of fun, I would answer those questions as well for you and share my thoughts. But just to get underway, I wanted to talk about the match sims. So, we all have our different views on how we look at the match sims. I personally feel that it's great to get an idea of how players are looking. Are they fit? Are they moving well? If a player has been rumored to play in a certain position, did they start there? But I think we just have to be a little bit careful getting carried away with the match sims. These are the things that we have to think about, everyone. We got to really think about the fact that in these match sims, they're not played at AFL intensity. I was watching these games and, sometimes, there was a bit of intensity there, but it's not AFL intensity, and that dramatically changes the flow of play. It changes the way players play and how they get their hands on the ball and what they do with it, which massively affects Supercoach scores. So we got to just keep that in mind. I think, too, we have to remember that there's big benches. Some of the teams had like 8 players on the bench, which throws, everything out, of course, as well, as far as, players being rotated and maybe what they might score. We got to see some fantastic people out there providing us with CBA percentages and even AFL fantasy points. AFL Central on Twitter was on X was someone that I was following just out of interest to see what the CBA percentages were and what some of the points were, but I wasn't taking a lot of interest because of these reasons that I've mentioned. We have to remember too that the times, the time of the games, the way that they're played are also arranged by the coaches. So for example, we had games that, went for 30 minutes and just stopped, 20 minutes and then some extra time. Some even stopped at 20 minutes and then played like 5 minutes of match simulation, where if you were in front, you had to keep the lead. If you were behind, you had to win the game. I think that was the Pies and North game. They did that. So, you've got that to take into consideration. Players are playing in different positions. You look at the Geelong game, Geelong, typical Geelong, they evenly rotated a lot of their players, so, a lot of them weren't playing in the proper positions anyway, and then players are being rested. We saw the Doggies game where you had like Bont Trelaw, even Oliver as well, play in the second half of games where they played mainly with VFL players, so there's all these things to consider. So with match sims, I think it's good to just have a quick look at, but certainly they're not games to be making decisions over. Definitely next week with the preseason games and the round 0 games, definitely. But there's still, definitely there's still some interest in the match sims and some things we can potentially get out of it. So, in my previous video, I think I did mention the Melbourne game and Tigers game, and I think maybe the Pies and North game, but I just wanted to go over very quickly the Pies North game. Again, just, McRae, Finn McRae, he looked good. There's no argument with that. He looks good. And if he actually plays and gets a game for the Pies and plays in the midfield, he will be good. But the question is whether he'll get into that best 22. Fortunately, with the Pies, we get to see them next week and in round 0. So that'll give us an idea of what Craig McRae plans to do with Finn McRae. So that's probably all for Collingwood. Dacos, again, actually, this is the other thing with match sims. You don't worry about premiums. Don't worry about how the premiums play and because they're premiums, they're guns. They're just kind of, dusting off the cobwebs and just sort of like playing a little bit more, not casually, but they're not playing at their peak performance and fitness. So we tend not to worry too much about the premium. So when you look at Nick Dacos, how was his performance? His performance was average, but the main thing with him was that he was fit and he was playing mostly in the midfield and he moved well, and that's all we care about. What we're really looking at is the preseason game next week and the round 0 game. That's where we're going to be looking at these guys. For North, McKercher looked great off halfback. You must have him in your team. Sheezer looked great off halfback as well. Don't know if Sheezer will play halfback or move into the midfield. Probably a mixture of both, because they're wanting to rotate McKercher and Fisher through halfback. Maybe even Bailey Scott when he comes back from injury. And Fisher looked great off halfback. So, how that's going to play out, I'm not really too sure. Lazaro looked good. He played in the midfield and forward. Not sure about his job security though. So, we'll see next week what Alistair Clarkson does with him in the preseason game. And of course, LDU looks great. If you've got LDU in your team, looks great. Playing predominantly in the midfield, high CBA percentage, and he'll have a great year if he can stay fit. So the Swans and the Giants game. So I got to see some of that game. That kind of crossed over with the Blues and the Cats game. But from what I saw with the Swans, so they rested Parker forward at the start of the game. And I think that's what they're going to do this year. They're going to rotate their mids through the forward line, because they've got so many mids. Now that they've brought in Jordan and Adams. And this is the thing now, I'm starting to think about Adams. So I've been pretty strong on Adams. If you look back at and listen to some of my previous videos, all the information and the stats pointed to him having a great year this year. And I think he will have a good year this year. But I think that his CBA percentage went from the 60s percentage mark to the 30s. I think it was like 39 or something like that last year. And I know that Sydney wanted an in and under midfielder, and Adams wanted to go to a team where he's playing more mid. But that doesn't mean he's going to a team where he's going back to over 70% CBAs. There's every chance he may go up from 39, which is what he played at last year with Collingwood, and that may go up to, say, 50% CBAs, but rotating him through the forward line. So that is possible, because they've got Chad Warner, I think, running through there, and Luke Parker, they'll run through there. Rowbottom, I think they'll run through there. And I'm probably missing a few. Callum Mills has to come back as well. Errol Goulden, they'll probably run through there as well. There's many. I know I'm forgetting a few, but there's a few there that they're going to run through the middle. So anyway, the good thing with Adams is we get to see him next week in the preseason game and in round 0. That'll give us a good indication of how Longmire will be using Adams. Grundy, he looked great. Really happy with how he moved. He was fit. He tackled hard. He competed well, and he moved well. So really, really, really happy with how he performed. Roberts, Matt Roberts, he played at half back. It looked like he didn't really pick up the pace of the game early, but he settled in. Again, with these Sydney players, we've got next week, we've got the round 0 game. So, we've got enough to go on there to see how they're going to be played. Jordan, he played on the wing. He looked good. And they also rotated him through the middle as well. So again, we'll have to wait and see how he will be used in these upcoming games before round 1. For GWS, Himmelberg, he started in defense and he looked okay. So we'll see how he will perform again with GWS. That's the advantage we've got. We've got next week and we've got round 0 as well, just to see how these players will play and what position they'll play, what role they'll play. Tom Green, man, he looked he looked great. I'm very happy to have him in my team. I think what's his ownership at the moment? So he's up to 24%. He's gone up a few percent since the last time I checked. So I know he's got the bye, which I think is round 3, but I'm happy to start with him. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. I think from memory, he's got I think Collingwood in round 0, and then Collingwood don't they don't tag or anything like that. So and that game is at home for GWS. So they got Collingwood, and then I think it's North and then West Coast. So that's a pretty good first few games before his bye. So I'm hoping for a very healthy average of between 115 to 120 for him after his first 3 games. But he looked great, looked really, really good in that match sim. Whitfield looked good too, playing off halfback if you're planning to have him in your team. The other one that was really interesting to see was Ware. He's a 123k mid. Now he looked pretty good. He was playing off a wing, and there's every chance he could line up in round 0. So I'm really keen to see what Adam Kingsley does with Ware and whether he gets a game in round 0. So I'll be looking for him closely in the preseason game next week. The other one that looked alright and moved well was Leek Alia. He's a 123k defender, and he actually looked pretty good. So again, I'm going to keep my eye on him next week and in round 0 and see whether he gets a game and whether Ware gets a game as well. But yeah, they looked alright. For the Blues Cats game, I was going sort of back and forth, like I said, between this game and the Giants and Swans game. So I didn't get to watch all of the game, for both of these games. Now, as we know, Williams and Walsh didn't play in this game, and as we now know with Walsh, he's got these back issues again. Not obviously as severely as he had last year, but just these aggravating back issues that flares up every now and then. And look, I was my rule is, as I mentioned in my last video, I'm not having any Carlton or Brisbane players in my team unless they are of very good value, as in like rookie value. That's why I've got Williams in the team if he plays round 1. But Walsh, with these injuries, and then he lines up in round 0 or round 1, what kind of a start is he going to get? Is he going to get off to a good start, or is it going to take him a little while to get into it because of these back issues? So I'm not really sure, but yeah, I'm definitely not going to start Walsh, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on him with the possibility of bringing him in after a few weeks if he's playing well. Fantasia, he played and looked all right. He's pretty cheap. I think he's 160, what is it? 175. It's 176 he is. So we'll see. Have a look at him, see if he gets named round 0 and round 1, and I'll consider whether I bring him in or not. Unlikely, but good to see another rookie on the ground if he gets named. With the Cats, as I mentioned before, it's hard to gauge things with the Cats because they just don't give anything away. Like in this game, and it's a match sim, so we can't expect much, but in this game, all the players were fairly evenly rotated, so no one really stood out. Hard to really gauge what Chris Scott's going to do. The only thing, a couple of things that came out of this game. So obviously Cameron Guthrie, if you've got him in your team, he was possibly a good mid-pricer, and also a good pod. Sorry about this. There we go, Guthrie. So he's 4% owned. So a pod as well. With only 4% owned, but I still, was going to have a look at him. But yeah, he got that quad injury in the first few minutes, and it looks like he may miss round 1. I think they're going in for scans and to get proper full checkout tomorrow, Monday, the 26th. So we'll see, what comes from that. But even so, with a quad injury and then going into round one, what kind of a start is he going to get if you were planning to pick him? Mana, I didn't really get to see him much. I don't think he did a lot. I think he just came on in the second half, I think. And of course, Stewart, he's a premium. He looked good. If you've got him in your team, there's no stress there. So that was that game. Then the Lions and the Suns game. So Dunkley was okay. Coleman looked good. But again, as I mentioned, I'm not picking any players, any Brisbane players or Carlton players. I'm going to wait till their bye because, as I've mentioned in my previous video, their price will not change. They'll play round 0, round 1, and then the bye. So there's no change in their price. So we get to see them for 2 games. And if they're playing really well, then we can bring one of those players in after their bye at their original price before their price goes up. So Coleman, he's one of those ones that I will wait on. I mean, he's got to be putting in big scores in the first 2 rounds for me to bring him in before then, or to start him. It's unlikely. Look, I'm definitely not going to start him, but I may bring him in after round 2 if he started the season on fire. For the Suns, so Flanders, he looked great. He was playing in the midfield and looked really good. I'm definitely going to be starting with him. We're all probably aware of Dimmer's Supercoach statement that he made about Flanders. So since that statement, his ownership has really jumped. It's come to 45% now. It's gone up like I think 10, maybe around 10% or 10 to 15% since I last checked, since that statement. So understandable. He's nearly 50% owned now, and especially with McRae having those hamstring issues, and we don't really know much about what's going on with his fitness and how he's going to start the season. So we may want to start at least one premium or semi-premium, and Flanders seems to be that player at 45% owned. So yeah, he looks pretty good. Sexton is the other one. So just recently, in the last few days, he's actually gotten pretty popular, I should say. And he's at 22% owned. And that has jumped quite a bit. He was nowhere near that only a few days ago. So the word is kind of spread. He's become a bit of a hype player now because of the rumors that he was playing off half-back, and then in the match sim, he played off half-back. So he looks pretty good, and I'm happy to have him at F6. The other one was Buderick. He actually played quite well too on a wing and a bit of half-back, I think, or about forward, but it was mainly on the wing. And he looked pretty good too. So I may consider him. Fortunately, again, with any Suns players, we get to see them in the preseason game and in round 0 too. So that's a real advantage for us. Miller looked good. Should be the same Miller of old, hopefully. Whether he reaches the heights of the 120 average again, I don't know. Unlikely. As I said in some of my previous videos, with Rowell improving, Flanders improving, Anderson improving, they're going to be getting their hands on the ball a lot more. So that means that logically Miller will get his hands on the ball a little bit less. He's still good value, but what could he average? I'm not sure. But we'll get a good look at him as well in the next couple of games. Bodie Hewland, didn't expect him, but then all the words started to come out about him that Dimmer is planning to play him and use him in like a back pocket or half back or something like that. Anyway, bit concerned about his job security, but we'll see next week, and particularly round 0, whether he gets a game. Then he might be a good pick, because I think he is also rookie priced. I think he's a defender. So 137k, so he's a little bit of an expensive rook. if you're planning to go with him. So the Dogs and Hawks game. So the Dogs, Sanders looked great. He played predominantly in the midfield, but we have to remember, Treloar wasn't playing, Bont wasn't playing, and even McRae, who may play midfield, he wasn't playing either. So they used Sanders a lot through the midfield in this game, and he looked really good. And even the comments from the coaches afterwards were that they liked him in the midfield. But either way, even if he doesn't play, even if he only plays a little bit in the midfield and a little bit up half forward, he's still worth having. He's going to be a great cash cow for us. So he looked really good. Sam Darcy looked good as well. He played mostly in the ruck because English wasn't playing, but he looked pretty good up forward, and he kicked some goals. So he might be pretty good. He's only a 123k forward on the bench. So he may make, hopefully enough money for us. Caulfield looked good as well at half back or in the back pocket. And I know, there'll be a few teams that would have him at D5, D6, or even on the bench. Either way, wherever you have him, I think it's pretty good to have him because I think he's going to be in their best 22. And he'll line up in round 1. Likewise for Harms as well. So Harms actually played in the middle, but again, that's because, Bont, Treloar weren't playing. So he played a lot more in the middle than he would have, but he played half forward and in the middle. And I actually think that's how he's going to play in the Doggies games for this year. He'll have that mix of inside mid and half forward, high half forward kind of role. So I'm pretty happy to have him, particularly at his price. He's only priced, what's he priced at? So he's priced at 46. So I think he could definitely average maybe 70 or 80, something like that. But yeah, I think he's definitely good value for someone priced at an average of 46. I think he could get to that 70 average. For Hawthorn, so Sicily was good. The only concern with Sicily is that the Hawks have unfortunately copped a few injuries, and so as a result, could Sicily start to man up on someone now? His role might change a bit. He won't get to play so much of a loose defender across half back. Maybe he might have to man up a little bit more. So we'll just wait and see on that. Weddle looked good. I don't know actually how many teams have Weddle in their team. So 5%. So it's still a little bit of a pod, but there's a few teams that have Weddle. He looked good. It looked good. I'm really interested to see how he plays next week in the preseason game. I'll keep an eye out on him, especially the next game I'm looking at is St Kilda Essendon, so especially with Winhager. So I've got Winhager at D4, and I was really keen to see where he would play in this game. It's a match sim, so he could have played anywhere, but if he played in the midfield, I would have been happy with that, and he did. He started in the midfield, but those first few minutes, he was nowhere near it. I was really worried about that, and then, like a minute later, he broke his hand. So we didn't get to really see him play through the middle. So now, am I going to start him? I don't really know. Because he's supposed to be there in round 1. That's what the coaches said. Was it Robert Harvey? I'm not exactly sure. Someone might have said that from St Kilda that he will still play round 1 likely because he can still keep his fitness up and train like all the other players, but he obviously just won't do any ball handling because of his broken hand. So I was really hoping to see him next week. I wanted to see, what kind of role is it? Is he playing purely in the mid? What's his CBAs like? Is it a defensive role? But now I won't get to see that. So do I start with him? I'm not really sure what to do with him. Do I go to someone like a Butterick from the Suns if he's playing halfback and he scores well next week, and in the round 0 game, maybe. I don't really know. I'll have to give that a bit more thought. But with the other St Kilda players like Wanganeen, Malira, and Jack Steele and Rowan Marshall, they all looked good. They looked great. I think if you're picking them, I think they'll do well. They'll have a good season this year. Darcy Wilson, so he played off half forward and a bit of wing as well, and he also looked good. I actually think he's going to be in the team in round 1. So I'm happy to actually have him on the bench in my midfield to give me that flexibility. So hopefully he does play round 1. For Essendon, so Zach Merritt was good. He's a premium. He's going to be good if you've got him in your team. Zach Reed, I didn't really notice him. I didn't get to watch all of this game, so I didn't actually get to notice Zach Reed and how he played. I've got him on my bench in my defense, so I was hoping to see him, but I didn't. But hopefully he plays next week, so I get to have a better look at him. But Nick Martin was the one that I was really looking forward to watch and to see how he was going to go. Obviously, there was this talk about him playing at halfback this year, and he lined up at halfback. I think he played a little bit of wing, but it was mostly halfback, and he was getting the ball. It looked a lot like Nick Dacos back there from Nick's first year, Dacos' first year, and even last year, where he just roamed across halfback and left his man and just went chasing the ball. It looked a lot like that with Nick Martin. But he also tackled. That's what was great to see with Nick Martin. He wasn't just running loose across halfback and just waiting for the ball to come to him. He went in there and tackled hard and won the ball as well. So that was really good to see. So I'm really happy to have him. This M5, M6 position, I've been tossing up between a few players of who to pick. I've been tossing up between Ollie Wines and Matt Crouch as well, who are at a similar price point. So I wasn't sure who to go with, but Nick Martin was a bit of, the talk was around Nick Martin and now playing at halfback, and so I thought, yeah, I'll go with him. And it was great to see that he did that in the match sim, but again, it's a match sim game. So next week is what I'm really looking at, and if he lines up and plays across halfback next week, that has certified his position in my team. And confirmed that position. So I'm happy to start with Nick Martin. So that was sort of all for that game. And then the last game was the Port and Crows game, and the Freo West Coast game. But the Port and Crows game, Rosie and Butters, they looked good. Again, premiums. So that looked great. Jace Burgoyne was one that I was keen to just see where he was going to play. 179k defender. I'd heard something about maybe him playing sort of a more permanent position, but yeah, I wasn't really too sure about that. Ollie Wines played in the midfield, looked all right. Jason Horne-Francis looked really good. He started at full forward or half forward, I think. But when he moved into the midfield, he looked really good. So I actually think he's going to be playing a lot of his time in the midfield. I'm happy to start him. But yeah, look, his pick is a gamble. His first couple of years have been a bit rough. He's at a full preseason. The coach is talking him up. So I'm happy to start him and then ride him out for a few games and see how he performs. And if he's just not, getting up there, then I may end up having to trade him to someone else. But I'm happy to start him. Jordan Sweet played and he was fine, but I think clearly Soldo is going to be the number one ruck for Port, and I'm not sure whether Sweet gets a game. I'm not sure whether Ken Hinkley is going to start with 2 ruckmen in the team, but again, we'll keep a close eye on that. For Adelaide, Matt Crouch, he was fine, gets a lot of handballs though. I don't know how that's going to translate to Supercoach scores, but we'll see how he plays next week. Dan Curtin was okay. We'll have a look at him next week as well in the preseason game. Didn't really notice Chris Burgess. He might be a good forward rookie. I think pretty sure he's a forward. 129k. There might be better forward rookies than Chris Burgess. Laird looked all right, but it was pretty clear that this year they're going to rotate more pacey midfielders through the midfield. So Rochelle and Rankin played a bit through the midfield. How that's going to impact Laird and Dawson and Crouch, I'm not actually too sure. And in the last game, it was Fremantle and West Coast. And yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch much of this game. I only got to see sort of a little bit of the first quarter, and that was enough for me. I was mainly looking for Fife, and he started in the midfield, played in the midfield. That doesn't mean a lot because it's a match sim, but I was looking to see how he moved. Was he fit? And he looked all right. So I'm keen to see how he goes next week. The other one was Sarong. He's a premium. I'm excited for what he's going to do this year. He looked really good, and I actually think he's going to really improve on his average this year. And Hayden Young, I was keen to see if he was going to get a bit of midfield time, and he did. So I still think he's a pretty good pick. I mean, he's a very popular pick. What's he at now? He's at 35% ownership. So I don't know actually whether that has gone up or dropped. I can't remember what it was before the last time I checked, but that's still a lot. You know, it's you know a bit over 1/3 of teams have him. So yeah, I think he's still worth that investment at that price. But we'll get a better look next week anyway in the preseason game. So that was what I got out of the match sims. Going to this sort of questionnaire that the sort of fantasy experts, these content creators, answered from the Herald Sun. That first question that they got asked was, how many premium priced stars can we start who are playing in opening round? So, you know, how many premiums can we have that have the early buy? Well, I think isn't necessarily how many you have. I think it's how many you have playing in each round. So I think if you can get away with 1 to 2 per round, I think that's pretty good. The exception to that is if you might have 3, maybe in one round that are playing, that have the buy, I should say. But if they're highly owned, so for example, for me, I've got in round 5 Dacos, Grundy. I would say both of them are. Dacos definitely is a premium. Grundy, I think, will be a premium, and Adams is a half premium. So it's 2.5. So if we have a look, Dacos is owned by 64% of teams, and Grundy is owned by 66%. So that's well over half. So when they have their buy, well over half the competition will also be in the same situation that I am. I think that's okay if you have those players, because you're not going to be affected too much, because there'll be other other coaches that will have the same issue as well. And then I think with Adams, I think he's 13%, so that's sort of not that much. But yeah, I think probably 1 to 2 premiums if possible. If you have 3 premiums in one round, if they're really highly owned, like over 50%, then it's okay. But you want to be around 1 to 2 per round in these early buy rounds. The second question was, does the increase to 40 trades change how you pick your starting squad? Well, not really for me. Maybe a little, just a little bit. I may be a bit more aggressive with who I pick, and maybe even aggressive with players who have the buy, because having those extra trades means that I can probably use a few more trades in those early rounds if I want to change things around a little bit. So, does it change my starting squad? Mostly no. I'm happy to pick the squad that I've got, but maybe like a player like Sexton, I was happy to have him at D6, knowing that I've got the 40 trades. I can make a few extra trades to help me get through the early buys. So the third question was, how many forwards have you got priced over 400k? So I've got 2, Flanders and Adams. I think most will probably have anywhere between none and 1 or 2 max. I don't think anyone will have more than 2. I think they might. You might have teams that will have McRae, Flanders, and Adams, or someone else. But yeah, 2 for me. And even with Adams, as I mentioned earlier, I may start with Fisher instead of Adams. It's highly likely I'll stick with Adams, but that is still an option I'm thinking about. The question 4 was, is Grundy back? Absolutely. So I've got Gawn and Grundy, and that is not changing. I expect very good things from those 2 players this year, and especially at what they're priced at. All the stats and the research all points to fantastic value with these 2 players. So yeah, I am not changing that at all. Question 5 was, who are your 3 must-have rookies and one that we might not know about? So the absolute 3 is an obvious one for anyone who's experienced at playing Supercoach and have done their research. It's absolutely Harley Reid, Colby McKercher, and Riley Sanders. They are the top 3 rookies to start with. I think we must all start with those 3 players. And the one we might know about, I don't know. I'm not really sure about that. But Bodie Hewland, maybe that surprised me. Didn't expect him to be starting potentially starting in round 0, round 1. So yeah, he might be a decent pick possibly. The 6th question, who is one player you would like to pick but probably won't? Well, as I mentioned earlier, with Martin and Horne-Francis, I'm also considering Wines and Crouch. So Wines and Crouch, they are players that I probably would like to pick, but I don't think I will. I mean, I can't really fit them in with my structure. Question 7 was yes or no. Bont, Dacos, McRae, Fife. So Bont, no. I'm not going to start with Bont. That's just because of his price. I'm hoping that he will go down in price at some point. He's still 36% owned, so just over or just under a third of the competition have him. Sorry, that's just over a third of the competition. Sorry, have him. And so I think he will still be a great player, but will he start averaging 130 from round 1? I'm not saying no to that. I would never say no to that with Bont, but it's a possibility, and I think at his price, I'm just not going to start him. Dacos, yes, I've got him in my team. At his price, I think with the games he's got coming up, and he plays right up through the round 5, may get the fingerprint McGuinness tag, but either way, I'm going to start him. I just think in his 3rd year, he's looking good, and I think he'll have a great year. McRae, I'm not going to start, especially with these hamstring issues that he's got. And Fife, I am definitely going to start, because if he's playing in the midfield and if he's fit and he plays well next week and he stays healthy and he plays in round 1 lining up in the midfield, I'm starting him at his price. And then the 8th question, which player are you not buying the preseason hype on? For me, that would be Tristan Sherry. I know that there's probably a few teams that have him. Let's see how many. Let's see how many he is. So he's owned by 6%. So with all the hype, he's still technically a bit of a pod. Yeah, there's all this hype about him, and I thought he was going to be owned by more teams. But I think with Sherry, he's priced at an average of 73 there, and he scored 102 and 75 in the 2 games that he played where Goldstein didn't play. That's a very small sample size, and the talk around him is how well he's going to go this year. But as I've said in previous videos, you just don't know how he's going to go. It's too small of a sample size, and there are a lot of solo ruckmen out there that aren't big scorers, and who's to say that he won't be, or he will be like that, and won't be a big scorer. So, you know, look, the potential's there for him to at least average 90, 95. Yeah, it's probably a gamble I'm not going to take, especially with Gawn and Grundy being such great value. So they were the 8 questions that they asked. I recommend go check out that article in Herald Sun. It was yeah, some really good information in that article. So the other thing I was going to do really quickly was just quickly go through the best 22 premiums. I know a few content creators have shared their thoughts on that. And I think in defense, you've got Dacos, Sicily, Stewart, I think Sinclair, Sheasel, and probably Hayden Young will be sort of the best defenders. I mean, obviously Luke Ryan, Houston, they'll all be around the mark. I think in the midfield, it's going to be pretty open. You've got, I think, Bont, Petrarca, I think Laird will squeeze in there, and Merritt will be around the mark. I think, though, Butters and Goulden and Sarong and Green, definitely Green, will be all up in the top 8, I think. And LDU, if he can stay fit, will be there as well. And then you've got, of course, all these other players like Dunkley, Dawson. They'll all be around the mark too. So I think they'll finish around or in that top 8 with the rucks. I do think it'll be English and Marshall. And I think Gawn and Grundy and even Briggs will be around the mark. But English and Marshall, I think, should be the top 2. And the forwards, it's really hard to know. The forwards, I'm not even going to guess, except for maybe Jack McRae and Sam Flanders. I think they'll end up finishing in the top 6. But as usual, as every year, we're all hoping for some midfielders to get forward status. And I think they will end up being in that top 6, whoever they may be. Maybe a Petrarca might get forward status, or maybe one of the Port midfielders. You know, we'll just have to wait and see on that. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. My team, it hasn't really changed much since my last video, and we'll see after the preseason games if I make any more changes to my team. But I think the next video that I'll put out, we'll wait till all the preseason games are done, and then I'll put out a video where I'll review those games ahead of round 0. So thanks again, guys, for listening or for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll catch you in the next video.